Well, it only took until yesterday at about 11 o'clock Eastern time, before Al Jazeera had an article essentially blaming me for the horrendous massacre in Norway last Friday. As you know, I told the audience yesterday, right out of the chute, that this killer was a monster and worse than Osama bin Laden. I mean, I don't know who intentionally targets children as this man did, but he's a monster. It didn't matter, to Al Jazeera, half the world away. It didn't matter the fact that I didn't. I don't air this program in Norway, or there's not a single shred of evidence that the killer has even heard of me. Why let the facts get in the way of a nice yellow journalism smear campaign by what used to be called America's enemy, Al Jazeera, but now is loved by so many people?
And in fact, viewership of Al Jazeera is going up in the United States because it's real news.
Real news.
You may not agree with it, but
yes,
you feel like you're getting real news around the clock instead of a million commercials and, arguments between talking heads and the kind of stuff that we do on our news, which, is not particularly informative.
You're exactly right. There is nothing like the real news of Al Jazeera. Here's a sampling of the real news. The Norwegian terrorist who murdered more than 90 innocent civilians, it's actually now 76, many of whom were teenagers, did not act alone. Or rather, he acted within a cultural and political context that legitimizes his fearful and hate-infested worldview. It is now clear that Anders Breivik is exposed or was exposed to large amounts of right-wing propaganda. Really, Al Jazeera? It's clear? Do you find those things self-evident? Because nobody else can see them. I don't. What's your evidence that he was exposed to large amounts of right-wing propaganda? Could it be that he's nuts? Could be. Could be that he was in some sort of neo-Nazi group. I don't know. I didn't know the jury was in already and came back, and the sentence has already been passed. The author excoriates the media, including the liberal New York Times, for having wrongly jumped to the initial conclusion that Islamic terrorists could have been involved. Now, I don't know. That's not a conclusion. That's a hypothesis that they could have been involved. By the way, I didn't jump to that hypothesis. I didn't make a comment on it. I didn't know. He writes, quote, the purported American left maintains this bigoted outlook, and it is an indication of how successful the right has been at constructing the stage upon which public debate is conducted. The two main anti-Muslim talking points are now taken for granted in this country. First, all terrorists in the West are Muslims. I didn't know that. I had no idea, really. I mean, I have been somewhat tainted by the 9/11 Muslim hijackers who killed 3,000 Americans, the Fort Hood slaughter of 13 U.S. soldiers by Nidal Hassan, the Muslim immigrant in Utah who murdered 5 people at a mall in Salt Lake City, the Christmas airline bombing attempt, Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, responsible for having all of us take our shoes off at the airport now, the attempted bombing at Times Square, and scores of other attacks, both successful and many that were thwarted by law enforcement, and the fact that the Islamists all over the world continue to tell us that it is their goal in life to kill all those who do not bow in front of Allah. Oh, in fact, let me give this too. This has kind of tainted me a little bit. This is the latest from the Brigadier General Nagdi in Iran yesterday. He said, quote, today, in order to have complete security in our country of Iran, quoting, we have no other choice than eliminating the Zionist regime Israel from the pages of time. So, yes, there might be a few of us that would jump to the conclusion that when we see a bomb go off, it might be a Muslim terrorist. But call us bigoted because we have nothing to back that up on. There's no history there. The second talking point, as he calls it, is that, quote, we are in the midst of a global civilizational war. He continues, these are the dual planks upon which Uncle Sam squats in his Afghani outhouse. Oh, remember, this is real news. This is the good stuff. You can't get this on American television. I'll tell you that right now.
In fact, viewership of Al Jazeera is going up in the United States because it's real news.
It's real news.
You may not agree with it, but you feel like you're getting real news around the clock instead of a million commercials.
Yeah. I mean, there's no commercials there. You just got these are the dual planks on which Uncle Sam squats in his Afghani outhouse. What American doesn't want to read this? This is real news. It's beautifully put, too. I wonder if is this a journalist or is this guy a poet? I'm not really sure. It's obviously objective. It's real news because it's from Al Jazeera. And the way he says Uncle Sam squats in his Afghani outhouse, I think he might be a poet or something. No, wait a minute. Here it is. No, I'm sorry. He is a journalist. His name is Ahmed Moore. Oh, look at this. He's a Palestinian American who was born in the Gaza Strip and who now lives in Cairo. Oh, thus the tender anti-American Uncle Sam squats in his Afghani outhouse poetry line. Then Ahmed writes, again in Al Jazeera, Anders Breivik, Mohammed Atta, and Baruch Goldstein are all cut from the same rotten cloth. Anwar al-Awlaki and Glenn Beck are peddlers of the faith. All share the same core afflictions. Now, wait a minute here. Let's see. So I'm Anders Breivik, Mohammed Atta, and a guy who was Al-Qaeda, and then the other guy who killed a bunch of people in the 1990s. I'm in that. One of these things just doesn't belong. I wonder which one it is. Let's see. I talk about small government, and the other guys have killed a bunch of people. The Al-Qaeda terrorist, I talk about lower taxes and freedom and responsibility, and they put suicide vests on children. I'm pretty sure I haven't killed women and children by the hundreds, maybe even the thousands, like that crazy Anwar cat in Iraq, but... Well, I guess it's basically the same thing. I do a radio show, they kill people. But he goes on. These men are insecure, including me. I'm an insecure guy. Really? I don't know. I don't think so. These men are insecure, violently inclined, and illiberal. The outside world scares them. Don't open a window! Ah! They hate homosexuals and strong women. Now, let's take this piece by piece, shall we? I'm violently inclined. Now, I don't know anybody who has preached peace more vehemently and more frequently than I have. At least in the media, I don't know a single person who has done more to stand with honor, stand with courage, stand with peace. Hey, let's make sure we all love each other. What do you say? I don't know anybody. I abhor violence. I don't think I was ever in a fist fight, maybe once in the 4th grade, but that was with the fat kid in class, and that's because I believe it was over cake. But we made up in the end, because my dad's a baker. There's always more cake. But that's a different story. Anybody who has ever listened to this show, anybody who pays attention, knows I abhor violence and think it's going to destroy the world, not help anybody's cause. Now, I hate homosexuals and strong women. Wow, that's weird, because I'm married to a strong woman. Man, I hate her guts. I'm so evil in my diabolical goodness. I love her, and I simultaneously hate her. It's crazy. I also may vote for a strong woman for president of the United States next year. She won't be wearing a pantsuit, but you never know. How about you, Abed? How you doing? And I hate homosexuals. That's an interesting one, because I have friends who are homosexuals. I have employees that are homosexuals. I don't really. Can you show me my hatred of homosexuals? Can you show me one of those? Because I don't know where that one is. But remember, this is coming from a Palestinian Muslim who might just want to look around his own neighborhood and maybe inside himself for examples of hatred of strong women and homosexuals. You know, I tell you what, Mr. Palestinian poet, why don't you do this? when women have the same rights as men throughout all of Islam, you know, those big ones like voting or leaving the house without a man, you know, or driving. And when homosexuals aren't buried up to their necks and stoned to death in Sharia law, maybe then you, as a poet and an unbelievable hypocrite, can lecture others on who's chauvinist and homophobic. And then send me the pictures of me stoning people to death like they do in Islam. But I digress. Now, you would read this and you'd say, this is a real news source. This is beloved.
And in fact, viewership of Al Jazeera is going up in the United States because it's real news.
It's real news.
You may not agree with it.
You
but
don't.
You feel like you're getting real
I'm
news
getting
around
something
the
here.
clock instead of a million commercials.
Yeah, I'm getting something. And I couldn't put my finger on it. What else could be going on here? Well, may I do what the New York Times did and jump to a conclusion that maybe something could be going on. Like maybe, are we having an impact on you, Ahmed, and your cute little Palestinian lie? Or is that what's happening? Because I don't know what is happening, but I know our 824 event is happening in Israel, and I know that people like you are very well aware of what is going on, and you'll do anything you can to discredit us and to stop this event, but it sucks to be you, because it's not going to end. It's not going to end. And it's not a little event. It's a movement, Ahmed. Yes. Yes, it is. So let me go back to the paragraph I started with, you know, Ahmed's column. The Norwegian terrorist who murdered more than 90 innocent civilians, many of whom were teenagers, did not act alone, or rather he acted within a cultural and political context that legitimizes his fearful and hate-infested worldview. Let me ask you this question, Ahmed and Al Jazeera, and those who are just like you. Could it be that you are acting within a cultural and political context that legitimizes your hate-infested view of Israel and the United States of America and overall the Western way of life? Aren't you doing everything you possibly can to demonize the right or those who believe in a crazy idea called rights and create an atmosphere of hate towards me and others who believe as I do? For Ahmed Moore, Al Jazeera, and their supporters in this country and abroad, and there are many, I will not be shouted down. I will not be silenced by your lies. I will not be afraid of your fear-mongering. I will not be afraid of your children with suicide vests. Because I know that love conquers hatred, that light conquers darkness, and the truth shall set you free. On a side note, and it really actually should take main stage, and it will, I'd like to make the announcement that we have selected a location for our Restoring Courage event. More details are to come on why we have selected this event. We told you that we were not going to do it at the Temple Mount. There was a lot of pushback and a lot of things that had happened, and so we would not do it at the most sacred space on planet Earth, the Southern Steps, the Southern excavation site at the Temple Mount. We didn't want to cause any trouble, and that's why we went to the chief rabbi in charge of all of the holy sites that protects for Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and made sure that we built a strong coalition and to make sure that we did things exactly right, to make sure we found the right place to have it. And that is why I'd like to announce today that on 8/24, Restoring Courage is going to be held at the southern steps of the Temple Mount, exactly as planned. I don't care if it's me, even without a microphone. On 8/24, I will be standing with courage at the Temple Mount. I invite you to join me. Either physically join me, find out details at glennbeck.com/Israel, or join me electronically. The only place you will get the coverage is gbtv.com. Join now. I doubt you're going to get the same coverage that real news organization, Al Jazeera, will give you.